The velvet curtains of the International Hotel in Las Vegas felt heavier than usual that night. The applause, a distant roar that barely penetrated the thick walls of Elvis Presley's dressing room. He sat before the mirror, not really seeing his own reflection in the harsh lights, but rather the tired lines around his eyes, the slight slump of his shoulders. Another show done the king. Connection with the fans, the thrill of the stage, it was in his blood. But lately, a quiet hum of loneliness had started to follow him around, a persistent low note in the symphony of his life. He was surrounded by people, yes, but how many truly saw him? The man, not the legend. How many dared to just be themselves around him? His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, was likely already counting the receipts, planning the next string of shows, the next movie. It was all a well-oiled machine, and Elvis was the engine, powerful and indispensable, yet sometimes he felt like just another cog. Pushed away from the vanity, the scent of hairspray and sweat lingering in the air. He needed to get out just for a little while to breathe air that wasn't filtered through the expectations of millions. He slipped into a simple dark suit, a wide-brimmed hat, and a pair of dark sunglasses, a disguise almost. He was good at it when he wanted to be. He could blend into the shadows, a ghost of himself. "Gonna take a walk, boys," he murmured to the few members of his Memphis Mafia still milling about. They looked up, surprised but used to his sudden whims. They knew better than to argue. "Be careful, EP," one of them, Red mumbled. But Elvis was already out the door, moving with a surprising swiftness for a man who had just poured his soul out on stage for an hour. The Las Vegas night was a cacophony of lights and sounds. Neon signs screamed for attention. Slot machines chimed like 1,000 tiny bells, and laughter spilled from every doorway. Elvis walked, his hands in his pockets, feeling a strange sense of freedom he rarely experienced. No one recognized him. No one tugged at his sleeve, screaming his name. He was just another face in the crowd. He found himself wandering down a side street, away from the main strip. Here, the lights were dimmer, the clubs smaller. Their promises whispered rather than shouted. A flicker of a sign caught his eye. The Blue Suede Lounge, live entertainment tonight. Through the smoked glass of the door he could hear it. A familiar riff, the wail of a guitar, and then a voice. It was his voice, unmistakably, yet not quite. It had the same low growl, the same soaring power. But there was a slight tremble, a raw edge that spoke of youth and unpolished passion, curiosity. A spark he hadn't felt in days. Pricked at him. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The Blue Suede Lounge was small, smoky, and packed. Tiny stage at the far end was bathed in a single spotlight, and there he was. A young man, probably in his early 20s, stood bathed in the light, dressed in a sparkling white jumpsuit. It wasn't the custom-made, perfectly tailored suits Elvis wore, but a cheaper imitation. The rhinestones less numerous, the fabric a little less luxurious. Yet on this young man it looked just right. He wore his hair in a familiar pompadour, his sideburns a little too long, a little too dark. But he had the look, the stance, the swagger. He was singing Suspicious Minds, and he was giving it his all. Every hip swivel, every hand gesture, every curl of the lip was a perfect echo. But what truly struck Elvis was the emotion in his eyes. It wasn't just an act, it was reverence. This young man wasn't mocking him, he was honoring him. He was pouring his heart into every note, not just imitating but channeling. His name, the waitress announced later, was Ronnie Turner. "He's local," she said, placing his drink down. "Been doing the circuit for a couple years, calls himself Ronnie the King Turner." The song ended, and Ronnie took a bow sweat beading on his forehead, his chest heaving slightly. The small crowd roared, not with the deafening applause of thousands, but with a genuine warmth, a shared joy. Ronnie looked truly happy, truly alive up there. During a short break, Ronnie went to the bar, wiping his brow with a towel. Elvis, on an impulse he didn't quite understand, pushed himself out of the booth and walked towards him. He usually avoided strangers, especially after a show, but something about Ronnie drew him in. Maybe it was the earnestness, the pure, unadulterated passion he'd just witnessed. "Good show," Elvis said, his voice a low rumble, intentionally deepened and roughened to disguise it. Further, Ronnie turned startled. His eyes, bright with the afterglow of performance, widened slightly. "Oh, thanks, mister. Just trying to do justice to the king, you know." He gestured vaguely at his outfit. "It's a tough act to follow." Elvis chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound that felt good in his chest. "I reckon it is." He leaned against the bar, subtly observing Ronnie up close. Kid was thinner than Elvis had been at that age, a little ganglier, but he had the spark. "You got a good voice, son, and you got the moves down." Ronnie's cheeks flushed slightly. "Appreciate Dak, really? I practice a lot. Been listening to his records since I was a little kid. He's everything, you know, the music, the presence, the way he connects with people." He looked down at his hands, a genuine humility in his posture. "I just hope to capture a fraction of that." Elvis felt a strange warmth spread through him. This kid wasn't trying to understand the magic. "I do," Elvis said, meeting his gaze. "What's your name, son?" "Ronnie. Ronnie Turner." He extended a hand. "Surprisey here." "Ronnie," Elvis said, shaking it firmly. "Just call me John Smith." It was the oldest trick in the book, but it usually worked, and for now it was enough. As Ronnie's hand slipped away, Elvis felt a connection, a small, unexpected thread of humanity in the glittering, often empty expanse of Las Vegas. He had come out seeking anonymity, and instead he had found an echo of himself, not in a mirror, but in the earnest eyes of a young man who admired him more than he could ever know. And for the first time in a long time, Elvis felt a lightness he hadn't known. He was missing. He wanted to hear Ronnie sing again. He wanted to talk to him more. He wanted to know what drove this young man to dedicate his life to honoring another. This John Smith was very curious indeed. Ronnie returned to the stage for his second set, the encounter with John Smith still buzzing in his mind. The stranger's words, "You do more than a fraction, son," had filled him with a quiet pride. It wasn't the usual backslapping praise he got from drunk tourists. This man had an intensity in his eyes, a depth to his voice that made his compliment feel truly earned, like it came from someone who knew what he was talking about. As Ronnie launched into Jailhouse Rock, he found himself glancing towards the dark corner where John sat. The man was still there, a shadowy figure, his hat pulled low, sunglasses. But Ronnie could feel his gaze, a focused attention that was different from the casual interest of the other patron. It was almost like a fellow performer, watching, analyzing, understanding. He found himself pouring even more energy into his performance, wanting to show John Smith he really meant it. He loved Elvis's music with all his heart. He'd grown up listening to those records, dreaming of the raw energy, the soulful ballads. Being an impersonator wasn't just a job. It was a way to keep that fire alive, to share it with others who felt the same way. It wasn't about pretending to be the king. It was about celebrating him. When his set finished, the small crowd cheered, and Ronnie took a deeper bow than usual. A silent thank you to John. He saw John nod almost imperceptibly from his corner. As Ronnie began to pack up his equipment, carefully folding his worn but beloved jumpsuit, John appeared beside him. "You're good, Ronnie," John said again, his voice still low, but softer now, less disguised. "You really capture the spirit." Ronnie zipped up his garment bag. "Thanks, Mr. Smith, that means a lot. Most people just want to know if I'm going to throw them a scarf," he chuckled a little sadly. Elvis felt a pang. That's the business, son. People latch onto the show. The spectacle, but the heart. Ronnie looked up, genuinely surprised. "You really think so?" "I know so," Elvis replied, his voice firm. "You sing because you love it, don't you?" "More than anything," Ronnie confessed, his eyes shining. "It's been a dream since I was a kid. I used to stand in front of the mirror with a broomstick guitar, pretending to be him. My folks thought I was crazy. Mine did too, Elvis mumbled before he could stop himself. He quickly corrected, any creative pursuit, you know, it's always a little crazy to the outside world. Ronnie nodded, oblivious to the slip. Yeah, I guess so. But when I'm up there singing one of his songs, it just feels right, like I'm connected to something bigger. He paused, looking around the emptying lounge. It's not exactly the International Hotel, but it's home for now. Elvis glanced around the humble club, a stark contrast to the grand stages he frequented. Yet there was an honesty here, a raw energy that was sometimes lost in the vastness of his own performances. He remembered playing in tiny clubs, the audience just feet away, the sweat and the music mingling in the air. It ain't about the size of the room, Ronnie, Elvis said, a faraway look in his eyes. It's about the feeling you put into it, the connection with the folks in front of you. Ronnie was surprised by the wisdom in John's words. You sound like you've done a bit of performing yourself, Mr. Smith. Elvis gave a wry smile. You could say that. Been around the block a time or two. He leaned in slightly. Tell me, what's the hardest part about doing what you do? Ronnie pondered the question, then sighed. Like I'm just a copy, not a true reflection. Elvis felt a powerful empathy. Copy can be a work of art if it's made with love and passion. Ronnie, don't ever forget that. What you're doing, it's keeping his spirit alive for people who might never get to see him. That's a gift. Ronnie's head shot up, his eyes wide. That's how I try to think of it. Thank you, Mr. Smith. You really get it. Elvis felt a warmth bloom in his chest. To be gotten without the weight of his name, without the blinding glare of fame, was a rare and precious thing. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed it. I do, Ronnie, I really do, Elvis said, his voice soft, almost a murmur. You got plans for tomorrow night? Ronnie blinked. No, not really, just gonna practice. Maybe work on some new songs. Why? How about we grab some coffee? Elvis suggested. A spontaneous idea. Talk a little more about this King fellow. Sounds like you know a lot about him. Ronnie's eyes lit up. Coffee? Yeah, I'd like that. Mr. Smith? A lot. He hesitated. But, are you sure? I mean, I'm just an impersonator. You're a talented young man with a good heart, Elvis corrected gently. And I got nothing but time. What do you say? Say, around 10 o'clock at the diner on the corner of Elm and Main, the one with the neon donut sign. You got it. Ronnie grinned, a wide, genuine smile that transformed his face. I'll be there. Elvis nodded, a faint smile on his own lips, beneath the brim of his hat. He turned to leave, feeling a lightness in his step he hadn't felt in weeks. He had come out seeking escape from the spotlight, and he'd found a surprising connection. A reflection of his own youthful passion in a young man who unknowingly carried his legacy in his heart. The thought of their coffee meeting tomorrow filled him with a quiet anticipation. This curious connection was just beginning. The diner on Elm and Main was bustling the next morning, the clatter of plates and cheerful chatter filling the air. Elvis, as John Smith, sat in a booth by the window, sipping black coffee, his hat and sunglasses once again his shield. He watched Ronnie approach, a little nervous but beaming, carrying a worn guitar case. Morning, Mr. Smith. Ronnie slid into the booth opposite him. Thanks for meeting me. It's not often I get to talk shop with someone who actually understands. Please, Ronnie, call me John. Elvis corrected, a gentle smile in his voice. And I'm glad you came. This shop of yours is mighty interesting. They talked for hours. Ronnie, fueled by coffee and genuine enthusiasm, spoke animatedly about Elvis's early Sun Records sessions, his deep dive into gospel music, his love for rhythm and blues. He dissected Elvis's performance style, his vocal nuances, the way he could command a stage with just a look. He spoke about the challenges of performing in smaller venues, the struggle to make ends meet, but never once did he sound bitter or resentful, only passionate. Elvis listened. Truly listened for the first time in ages. He heard his own life story, his own artistic journey, reflected back at him through Ronnie's eyes. Eyes that saw not just the superstar, but the artist, the pioneer, the soul behind the music. He felt a deep connection to this young man who understood him without knowing him. "You know the thing about Heartbreak Hotel," Ronnie was saying. His voice hushed with reverence. "It's not just a songliness, that ache. He sings it like he's lived it." Elvis felt a chill run down his spine. He had lived it. He was living it now in a different way, perhaps, but the loneliness was still there, a constant companion. He cleared his throat. Sometimes, the best artists, they just pour their own truth into their music. That's what makes it real. Exactly. Ronnie slapped the table, nearly spilling his coffee. "You get it, John. Most people just think about the outfits and the swivels, but it's more than that. It's the honesty, the vulnerability." Elvis nodded slowly. "It is." He saw the pure, unadulterated respect in Ronnie's eyes, and it struck him how rare that was for him these days. People respected Elvis Presley, the icon, the legend, but Ronnie respected the music. As the conversation flowed, Elvis found himself opening up subtly, talked about the pressures of touring, the constant demand to be on, the feeling of being trapped by one's own image. He spoke of the joy of creating music, but also the exhaustion that came with living under a microscope. He carefully phrased his words, making them sound like the general observations of someone with experience in the entertainment industry, not the lived reality of the world's biggest star. Ronnie listened intently, nodding, offering sympathetic murmurs. "I can only imagine, John, even at my level, trying to make a name for yourself. It's tough. People want you to be one thing, but you also want to grow. Try new things." "Preach," Brother Elvis said, a genuine laugh escaping him. "Sometimes you just want to put on a normal shirt, sit in a normal diner, and just talk." Ronnie smiled. "Well, you found the right guy for that. John, I don't know much about fancy." He gestured to his guitar case. "You play, John?" Elvis hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I picked up a guitar a long time ago. Mind if I play you something? It's a new arrangement I'm working on for Can't Help Falling in Love. I'm trying to make it a little more intimate, strip it back, you know." Before Elvis could answer, Ronnie had the guitar out. He held it with a practiced ease, his fingers light on the fretboard. He began to play a soft finger-picked melody, slower, more tender than the famous version, and then he sang, his voice surprisingly clear and gentle, full of a quiet yearning. Elvis closed his eyes, leaning back in the booth. He had sung that song thousands of times to screaming crowds under dazzling lights. But hearing it now in a noisy diner, stripped bare by a young man's earnest voice and simple guitar, it felt new again. It felt like his song, but also like a shared secret. Ronnie had found a new depth in it, a vulnerability that Elvis himself sometimes forgot in the performance of it. When Ronnie finished the last note lingering in the air, a few people in the diner had stopped their conversations, drawn by the unexpected beauty. Ronnie looked up, a shy smile on his face. "So what do you think, John?" Elvis opened his eyes, a profound emotion stirring within him. "Ronnie," he said, his voice a little hoarse, "that was beautiful. You found something in that song, something truly special. You got a gift, son, more than just imitation." Ronnie's face lit up with a mix of surprise and gratitude. He paused, looking directly at Elvis, a hint of curiosity in his gaze. "You really do know a lot about this music, don't you? It's like you've lived it." Elvis felt a jolt. He'd been careful, but Ronnie was sharp. He offered a quick pran, "Ronnie, like you." He quickly changed the subject. "You know, there's something about performing in a smaller place, a little more personal. It brings out a different kind of magic, doesn't it?" Ronnie nodded, still thoughtful. Does. It's more intimate. Like you're really talking to people, not just singing at them. They continued to talk for another hour, the connection between them deepening with every shared thought about music, performance, and life itself. Elvis felt a genuine warmth he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging with someone who genuinely appreciated his world without any expectations. He knew he couldn't keep his identity a secret forever, not if this friendship continued to grow. But for now, in this small diner, he was just John Smith, and Ronnie Turner was just a talented, earnest young man, and that was more than enough. It was perfect. Coffee dates at the diner quickly became a regular thing. John Smith and Ronnie Turner, two seemingly ordinary men, would meet usually after Elvis's own late-night shows and talk for hours. Sometimes they would just sit and listen to the jukebox, dissecting classic blues or country tunes. Other times, Ronnie would bring his guitar and they'd work through songs. Ronnie playing new interpretations, Elvis, as John, offering subtle suggestions, a quiet hum, or a perfectly timed critique that always seemed to hit the mark. He didn't know who John was exactly, but he knew John understood music like no one he'd ever met. John's advice was always in Seagull, never condescending. He spoke of stage presence, of connecting with an audience, of letting the music flow from the heart, not just the throat. Talked about the loneliness that could come with being a performer, the pressure to always deliver, and the importance of finding one's own voice within the art. "You know, Ronnie," John said one night, tracing patterns on the condensation of his glass, "sometimes the biggest challenge isn't hitting the notes. It's letting yourself be vulnerable, letting the audience see a piece of you, not just the act." Ronnie nodded, taking it all in. "Yeah, I get that. Sometimes I feel like I have to be Ronnie the King Turner, all swagger and moves. But then I remember why I started, and it was just to sing the songs I love." "Exactly," Elvis said, a rare smile gracing his lips beneath the brim of his hat. He let the ambiguity hang in the air. He couldn't lie directly, not to Ronnie, but he couldn't tell the truth. Not yet. The friendship felt real, unburdened by expectations or the dazzling weight of his fame. Elvis found himself looking forward to these quiet meetings more than anything else. Ronnie's genuine passion for music, his earnest spirit, and his unwavering admiration for the king were a balm to Elvis's often weary soul. It reminded him of why he started, of the pure joy of making music before the business, and the expectations became so overwhelming. One evening, Ronnie arrived at the diner, his face flushed with excitement. "I knew you had it in you, and it's all thanks to you, John," Ronnie said earnestly. "Seriously, all your advice, it's helped me so much. I feel like I'm not just mimicking anymore. I'm actually performing. I'm finding my own way to honor him." Elvis felt a lump in his throat. This kid was a sponge, taking every piece of wisdom and turning it into something beautiful. "You were always performing, Ronnie. I just helped you see it." He paused. "For this special set, how about you try something a little different? Something only you can do?" Ronnie leaned forward, intrigued. "Like what? You know how much the king loved gospel, right?" Elvis began. "It was the root of so much of his sound. What if you took one of those gospel songs, one that really speaks to you, and poured your whole self into it? No flashy moves, just pure emotion, pure voice." Ronnie thought for a moment, then his eyes lit up. "Exactly," Elvis said, a surge of excitement rising within him. "Something that lets your voice shine and shows the audience the depth of your soul. Something that reminds them where the heart of his music truly came from." Ronnie picked up his guitar, a thoughtful hum escaping him. "I like that, John. I really like that. It's vulnerable, but powerful." They spent the rest of the night discussing the arrangement, the phrasing, the emotional beats of "How Great Thou Art." Elvis, drawing on his deep, intimate knowledge of gospel music and his own experiences, guided Ronnie with quiet precision. He told Ronnie about the power of silence, the importance of letting the words breathe, of building the emotion slowly from a whisper to a roar. Ronnie absorbed it all, his eyes shining with understanding. A few nights later, Elvis, once again in his John Smith disguise, was at the Blue Suede Lounge. The place was even more packed than usual. Ronnie was halfway through his special set, the crowd captivated. Then he announced, "And now I want to try something a little different, a song that means a lot to me, and to the king himself. A song that reminds us where all the heart and soul comes from." The opening chords of "How Great Thou Art" filled the smoky air, played with a quiet reverence by Ronnie's guitar. And then Ronnie began to sing. His voice, usually vibrant and energetic, was hushed, almost a prayer. He sang with a raw honesty that transcended imitation. He didn't try to sound exactly like Elvis. He sounded like Ronnie, pouring his entire being into the spiritual hymn. As the song built, his voice soared full of genuine emotion, echoing the power and soulfulness that was truly Elvis's core. The small crowd was silent, mesmerized. Some even had tears in their eyes. Elvis sat in his corner, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. Ronnie wasn't just singing a song. He was performing an act of pure devotion. He was embodying the spirit, the very essence of what Elvis had always tried to convey with his music. And in that moment, seeing his own legacy cherished and carried forward by this earnest young man, Elvis felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He wasn't just the king. He was a man whose music touched others, inspired others, long after the spotlights dimmed. It was a profound moment, a silent acknowledgement between two men, one famous, one not connected by a shared, sacred passion. And Elvis knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that he couldn't keep the truth from Ronnie forever. The secret was becoming too heavy, the connection too real. Ronnie's "How Great Thou Art" performance became the talk of the Blue Suede Lounge. People specifically requested it, saying it gave them chills. Ronnie himself felt a profound shift in his act. It wasn't just about the entertainment anymore. It was about the connection, the depth. And it was all thanks to John. One afternoon, a few weeks after that pivotal performance, Ronnie met John at their usual diner booth, but his usual enthusiasm was tempered by a visible unease. "What's on your mind, son?" "Elvis?" as John asked, noticing the worry lines on Ronnie's brow. Ronnie sighed, pushing his coffee cup around. "There's this new guy. He's been coming to my shows, sitting in the front row just staring." "A fan?" John asked, trying to sound casual, but a prickle of concern ran through him. Las Vegas was full of all kinds of characters. "I don't know," Ronnie murmured. But it also meant more exposure, more scrutiny. "That sounds like good news, Ronnie," John said carefully. "A chance to move up." Ronnie chewed on his lip. "Yeah, but he wants me to change things. Says I need to modernize the look, diversify the song choices. He even hinted I should sing some of my own stuff, not just Elvis." Elvis leaned back, observing Ronnie closely. This was a crucial moment. Would he stay true to his passion, or would he compromise for a chance at bigger fame? "What do you want to do, Ronnie?" John asked, his voice gentle but firm. "Forget what he says. What does your gut tell you?" Ronnie ran a hand through his carefully pompadoured hair. "I don't know, John. A part of me is really excited. Imagine a bigger stage, better pay, maybe even a record deal. But the thought of not singing Elvis, or changing the act, too much, it feels wrong, like I'd be selling out what I love. He says I can be a bigger star if I stop being just an impersonator." Elvis chose his words carefully, drawing on his own complex relationship with fame and identity. "Ronnie, every artist faces choices. You got to decide what matters most. Is it the fame or is it the music? The feeling you get when you connect with people, the music, the connection, of course." Ronnie insisted, his eyes flashing. "Then don't let anyone tell you to compromise that. John advised, his voice low and sincere. Ronnie asked, his voice tinged with desperation, "What if I regret it later?" Elvis fixed him with a steady gaze. Ronnie absorbed his words, chewing on them. "So you think I should stick to my guns?" "I think you should listen to that voice inside you, Ronnie," John said softly, "the one that told you to sing 'How Great Thou Art' the way you did. The one that tells you why you started doing this in the first place." Ronnie was quiet for a long moment. Then a slow, determined smile spread across his face. "You're right, John. You're always right. I can't just throw away everything I believe in. I'll meet with him again, but I'm going to tell him my terms. I'm not going to stop being Ronnie the King Turner. I'm going to find a way to grow without losing the core. I'm going to find a way to grow without losing the core of who I am." He had chosen authenticity over fleeting fame, soul over spectacle. It was a choice Elvis himself often struggled with in his own career. The constant push and pull between artistry and commerce. "That's my boy," Elvis said, a warmth in his voice that was barely disguised. He reached across the table and clapped Ronnie on the shoulder, a gesture of profound approval. "You make me proud, Ronnie." Ronnie looked up, a slight frown creasing his brow. "You know, John," he said slowly, "sometimes when you talk about the king, and about the music and about the pressures of this business, it's like you talking about like you are him, somehow." Elvis's heart skipped a beat. Had he been too open, too careless? He pulled his hand back, forcing casual chuckle. "Now, Ronnie, don't let the Vegas lights get to your head. I'm just a fan, like I said. A fan who's seen a lot of life and a lot of stages." He quickly changed the subject. "So you ready for your next show at the Blue Suede Lounge? We gotta get those new crowds even more pumped, right?" Ronnie still looked at him with a glimmer of suspicion, a spark of an idea in his eyes, but he nodded, a determined glint in his own gaze. "Yeah, John, I am. And thanks, really. I don't know what I'd do without your advice." Elvis smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that rarely reached his eyes. These days he knew the feeling of being lost, of needing a guiding hand, and he knew with growing certainty that the secret could not hold much longer. Ronnie was getting too close. The bond was too strong. The John Smith persona was getting harder for Elvis to maintain. Every time Ronnie looked at him, with those earnest, searching eyes, Elvis felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him. Ronnie was getting sharper, asking more pointed questions. The shared passion, the deep understanding between them, made the deception feel increasingly wrong. One evening after another late-night meeting at the diner, Ronnie leaned back in the booth, swirling the ice in his glass. "John, I gotta ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." Elvis's heart hammered. This was it. He braced himself. "Go ahead, Ronnie." Ronnie's voice was a mix of awe and burgeoning suspicion. Elvis took a slow breath. He could lie spin a tale about being a session musician or a long-time roadie. But looking at Ronnie's sincere face, he couldn't bring himself to do it. The kid deserved the truth, but not like this, not in a diner booth. He needed time to think, to plan the reveal carefully. "That's not really an answer, John." "I know it's not," Elvis admitted, feeling a pang of guilt. "But it's the best I can give you right now. Just know that I wouldn't mislead you, and that our friendship, it means a lot to me." Ronnie nodded slowly, though the doubt still lingered in his eyes. "Okay, John, I hear you, but it's just really uncanny sometimes, like you are him." Elvis quickly changed the subject, turning the conversation back to Ronnie's upcoming shows, subtly deflecting the intense scrutiny. But the seed of doubt had been planted. A few days later, a near miss almost blew Elvis's cover completely. He was meeting Ronnie at the diner, walking in confidently, when he saw a familiar face at the counter, one of his security guards, heading in for a coffee break. Elvis froze quickly, pulling his hat lower, turning his back and making a hasty exit. Called Ronnie's home phone from a payphone down the street. making up a quick excuse about an urgent appointment. Ronnie sounded disappointed, but understanding. "Absolutely, Ronnie. Soon," Elvis promised, his voice tight. He knew he couldn't keep this charade going much longer. The risks were too high and the emotional toll was mounting. He hated lying to Ronnie, especially after the genuine bond they'd forged. He spent the next few days wrestling with the decision. How do you tell someone you've been pretending to be someone else when that someone else is the most famous person on the planet? How do you explain the need for anonymity, the desire for a real connection? He worried Ronnie would feel betrayed, or, worse, that their unique friendship would shatter under the weight of the revelation. He imagined Ronnie's shock, his disbelief, maybe even anger. He pictured the awe, the sudden shift in their dynamic. No more casual chats, no more John Smith. It would be Mr. Presley, or Sir. But then he remembered Ronnie's face when he sang, "How great thou art," with such raw emotion. He remembered Ronnie's earnest questions, his pure love for the music. He remembered the quiet understanding they shared, the way Ronnie had truly seen the artist, not just the celebrity. This was different. This wasn't just a fan, this was a friend. He couldn't risk losing that friendship by letting the secret fester or by letting it spill out. He owed Ronnie the truth, told with respect and honesty. Elvis made a decision. It was time he would invite Ronnie to Graceland, not to the public tours. It was the only way to truly show Ronnie who he was and why he had chosen to be John Smith for so long. It would be an intimate, controlled reveal away from the prying eyes of Las Vegas. Called Ronnie's landline that evening, making sure to deepen his voice slightly just in case Ronnie still harbored suspicions. "Ronnie, it's John," he said. "Hey, John, everything all right? You sounded a bit rushed the other day." "The executive airport. What's going on, John?" Elvis took a deep breath. "You'll see, Ronnie. Just trust me on this. It's important. And it might just change your life for the better, I hope." There was a pause on the other end. Then Ronnie's voice tinged with a mix of apprehension and excitement. "Okay, John, I trust you. I'll be there early." Elvis hung up the phone, his hand trembling slightly. The moment of truth was approaching. He had laid the groundwork for this friendship carefully, secretly. Now he would lay bare the truth he hoped more than anything that Ronnie would understand. Ronnie stood nervously at the small private terminal of the Las Vegas Executive Airport. The early morning light barely touching the tarmac, he felt a mix of excitement. Why, the private airport. What could be so important? A sleek, private jet sat on the runway, its engines quietly idling. A sharp-suited man with a friendly smile approached him. "Ronnie Turner, Mr. Smith sent me. This way, please." Ronnie's heart pounded as he was ushered onto the luxurious plane. It was nothing like any plane he'd ever been on. Plush seats, polished wood, and a sense of quiet opulence. He took a seat by the window, feeling a bit out of place. He saw the suited man talking to the pilots, and then a door opened at the front of the cabin. John stepped through, but this time he wasn't wearing his usual hat and sunglasses. Elvis Presley stood before him, dressed in a simple but expensive blue tracksuit. His hair was perfectly coiffed. His eyes, those incredibly famous, unmistakable eyes, were warm and a little nervous. The man was taller, broader than Ronnie had imagined from his mask encounters. He had the presence, the aura, of someone utterly unique. Ronnie gasped. He felt the blood drain from his face, then rush back in a hot wave. His jaw dropped. "No way," he whispered, a strangled sound. "It can't be." Elvis walked slowly towards him, his hands clasped in front of him. "Hello, Ronnie," he said, his voice the very sound Ronnie had spent his life studying, imitating, revering. It was softer now, tinged with apology, but undeniably the voice of the king, Turner. He offered a small, hesitant smile. Ronnie could only stare, his mind reeling. The John Smith, who had offered him advice, shared coffee with him, talked about music with such genuine passion, was Elvis Presley. The man whose posters adorned his bedroom wall, whose records filled his small apartment, whose life he dedicated his own humble career to celebrating. You're him. Ronnie stammered, the words barely forming. You're Elvis. Elvis nodded, a solemn expression on his face. He sat down opposite Ronnie, leaning forward, his gaze sincere. I know this is a shock, and I apologize for it, trying to process betrayal. No shock, absolutely awe, overwhelming. Why? He managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. Why pretend to be John Smith? Elvis sighed, running a hand through his hair. To have a real conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from me but honest talk. He paused, looking directly into Ronnie's eyes. When I saw you that night at the Blue Suede Lounge, you weren't trying to be me. You were honoring me. You loved the music. You had that same fire I remember having when I first started. I needed that, Ronnie. I needed to connect with someone who understood the music, the passion, without all the baggage of my name. You made me feel like I was just another man, Ronnie. Elvis continued, his voice softer now, tinged with a quiet vulnerability. A friend. And that, believe me, is something I haven't had in a long, long time. Ronnie was still trying to catch his breath. The pieces were falling into place. The uncanny knowledge, the perfect advice, the way John seemed to understand his struggles with performing. It all made perfect, unbelievable sense. He wasn't angry, he was overwhelmed. And strangely, incredibly touched, Ronnie asked, remembering the first words John had spoken to him. You really thought I was good? Elvis smiled, a genuine, warm smile that lit up his eyes. Ronnie, you were more than good. You had soul, you had heart, you understood the music, you still do. I've seen a lot of impersonators, but none of them ever came close to what you do. He paused. And the way you sang How Great Thou Art, that moved me more than I can say. You brought that song to life, in a way I hadn't heard in years. Tears welled up in Ronnie's eyes, a mixture of disbelief, emotion, and profound gratitude. The king, his idol, his hero, had not only watched him but had admired his work, had befriended him, had mentored him. I don't know what to say, Ronnie stammered, shaking his head. This is insane. This is like a dream. It's real, Ronnie, Elvis said, reaching out to gently clasp Ronnie's arm. And our friendship, that's real too. I wanted to tell you before, but it's hard. When you're me, the truth can sometimes get in the way of a genuine connection. But I couldn't keep lying to you, not with the bond we formed. He looked at Elvis, truly. Looked at him not as the man who had been John Smith. He saw the weariness in his eyes, the need for something real. And in that moment, Ronnie felt not awe, but a surge of profound empathy. This legendary man needed a friend, just like anyone else. Thank you, Ronnie finally said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for telling me. And thank you for being my friend. John, even if you were Elvis all along. Elvis smiled, the genuine relief washing over him. Ronnie wasn't angry, he understood. So Ronnie, he said, gesturing around the luxurious cabin, we're heading to Memphis, to my home, Graceland. I want to show you around, and I think we have a lot more to talk about. Ronnie could only nod, tears streaming freely down his face. Now he was flying to Graceland with Elvis Presley, his friend. His world had just been turned upside down, but in the most beautiful, heartwarming way imaginable. The journey to Graceland was a blur for Ronnie. He sat across from Elvis, talking, listening, occasionally pinching himself. Elvis answered every question with honesty and patience, from the small details of his daily life to the deeper feelings about fame and family. He explained his need for privacy, his yearning for genuine connections away from the spotlight. Ronnie listened, seeing not just the king, but the man burdened by his own legend. Seeking solace in simple human connection when they arrived at Graceland, Ronnie was speechless. It was magnificent, yet also felt like a home filled with personal touches. Elvis led him through the famous rooms, telling stories, sharing memories. But the true magic happened when they went into the music room. "This is where I truly feel at home, Ronnie," Elvis said, gesturing to the grand piano and various guitars. "The music, it's always been the anchor." Ronnie ran a hand over the keys of the piano, almost reverently. "It's incredible, Elvis. Just incredible." "Now, Ronnie," Elvis said, turning to him, a serious look on his face, "this friendship we have, it's something special to me, and I want to make sure it continues. But I also want you to understand something important. You have talent, true talent beyond just imitating. You have a voice, a heart. I appreciate that, Elvis, but I'm an impersonator. That's what I do." "And you do it beautifully," Elvis agreed. "But what if you could do more? Not just mimic, but elevate. Use your reverence for my music as a foundation, but build something unique on top of it. Something that is distinctly Ronnie Turner, while still honoring the king." "I don't know, Elvis. I've always just tried to get it as close as possible. And that's why you're so good," Elvis countered. "But you've also shown me that you can bring something new, something deeply personal to the songs. Think about how great thou art. That was your soul singing, not just a performance." "Come here," he said, gesturing for Ronnie to sit beside him on the sofa. "Let me show you something." For the next few hours, in the quiet sanctity of Graceland's music room, the king of rock and roll gave Ronnie Turner a private master class. He showed Ronnie subtle ways to phrase a lyric for maximum emotional impact, how to use his breath to control dynamics, how to command a stage with presence, not just movement. He demonstrated vocal techniques, guitar riffs, and shared stories behind the psalms, giving Ronnie a deeper understanding of the music than any record or book ever could. He also encouraged Ronnie to think beyond the jumpsuit. King was never just about the outfit, Ronnie. It was about the fire inside. Find your fire, let that guide you. Maybe that means keeping the jumpsuit, but maybe it means putting your own twist on it, or even designing something entirely new for certain performances. Ronnie absorbed every word, every demonstration, his mind buzzing with possibilities. It wasn't about abandoning his identity as an Elvis impersonator. It was about evolving it, about transforming it into something richer, more authentic, more him. "So what do you think?" Elvis asked, putting the guitar down. "Are you willing to try? To explore what Ronnie Turner can do? Inspired by Elvis, but also true to himself." Ronnie looked at his idol, his friend, a man who truly understood the heart of his passion. "Yes, Elvis, I want to. More than anything, I want to make you proud." "You already do, son," Elvis said, a warm hand on Ronnie's shoulder. "More than you know." Over the next few days at Graceland, their bond deepened further. They talked for hours about everything from family to faith, from the joys of music to the struggles of life. Ronnie saw a side of Elvis that few ever did. Vulnerable, reflective, incredibly generous. Elvis, in turn, found a genuine confidant, someone he could be completely himself with, someone who saw him as a person, not just a symbol. Before Ronnie left, Elvis made him promise to keep their friendship and the revelation of his identity a secret. "It's important, Ronnie. For me, it's about preserving that quiet space where I can just be me. For you, it's about proving yourself on your own terms, not just because you know me. My lips are sealed, Elvis. This is our secret. And thank you for everything. This has changed my life." As Ronnie boarded the private jet back to Las Vegas, he was a changed man. He still looked like Ronnie Turner, Elvis impersonator, but inside a new artist was beginning to awaken. carried not just the legacy of the king, but the wisdom of his friend and the profound, heartwarming knowledge that he had found a connection beyond his wildest dreams. He was ready to forge a new path, honoring Elvis in a way that was uniquely his own. Back in Las Vegas, Ronnie Turner's performances at the Blue Suede Lounge began to subtly change. He still wore the jumpsuit, still perfected the moves, but there was a new depth to his voice, a newfound confidence in his stage presence. He sang Elvis's songs with an even greater authenticity, not just mimicking but interpreting, infusing them with his own soul. His rendition of "How Great Thou Art" became a staple, a powerful, quiet moment that captivated audiences and brought tears to many eyes. Word began to spread, not just among the regulars, but through the Vegas entertainment circuit. Ronnie Turner isn't just an impersonator anymore, people whispered. He's something special. He's got the king's spirit. And Elvis, from a distance, watched it all unfold. Their secret friendship continued primarily through phone calls. Late at night, after his own shows, Elvis would call Ronnie. They would talk for hours, not just about music, but about life, about their day, about their hopes and fears. For Elvis, these calls became a lifeline, a connection to a world where he wasn't under constant scrutiny, where he could simply be himself. He would offer Ronnie advice, listen to his struggles with the entertainment industry, and celebrate his small victories. Ronnie would tell him about the crowds, about a new song he was learning, about the ongoing dance with the talent scout who still wanted him to branch out. "He came back, Elvis," Ronnie chuckled during one call, "still pushing for more original material. But I told him, I'm not stopping, Elvis. I'm just expanding. I sang him a couple of Elvis gospel songs the way you taught me. He was floored, said he'd never heard anything like it from an impersonator." Elvis would beam on the other end of the line. "That's it, Ronnie. That's how you do it. You don't compromise your heart. You just expand it." Their friendship was a unique tapestry woven from shared passion and mutual respect. Elvis found solace in knowing that his music, his art, was being carried forward with such genuine care by someone he deeply respected. He found a release from the pressures of fame and the unburdened conversations with Ronnie. He could complain, he could laugh, he could be vulnerable, and Ronnie would simply listen, offering his own perspective. As a young man, Ronnie in turn found in Elvis not just his idol but his greatest mentor and truest friend. He never once tried to leverage their friendship for fame or personal gain. The secret was sacred. He cherished the advice, the conversations, the knowledge that the man who inspired his entire life was genuinely invested in his success and his happiness. It was a private legacy, a whispered wisdom passed from king to protege. One night, Elvis felt a particularly heavy sense of loneliness after a show. The applause had been deafening, but it felt hollow. "Hey, Ronnie," he said, his voice a little weary. "Elvis, everything all right? You sound tired." "Just another night. Sometimes it feels like the walls are closing in, like I'm just playing a part and the real me is getting lost." "I get that, Elvis. Sometimes, after a show, when the adrenaline wears off, it feels like that. Like you poured everything out, and there's nothing left." He paused. "But then, I think about why I do it, for the music, for the feeling it gives people. And I remember what you told me about connecting with the audience, letting them see your heart." He heard Elvis sigh, a long drawn-out sound that was more relaxed than before. "You always know what to say, Ronnie. You remind me of what matters." "You remind me too, Elvis," Ronnie said softly. "You remind me that it's okay to be vulnerable, even when you're supposed to be the king. You taught me that the heart is what truly connects people." Their conversations were like this, quiet, honest, supportive. They filled a void in each other's lives. Elvis found a genuine human connection, a mirror of his younger self, who still believed purely in the power of music. Ronnie found a guiding light, a true friend who understood his path like no one else could. The private legacy of their friendship flourished unseen by the public eye. It was a testament to the power of human connection, the surprising places it could be found, and the profound impact it could have. Ronnie continued to hone his craft, becoming more and more his own artist, always with the guiding hand of the man he still revered as the king. But now, cherished as a dear friend, the music lived on, not just in records, but in a quiet, heartwarming harmony between two souls. Years passed. Ronnie Turner, still performing as Ronnie the King Turner, had carved out a unique niche in Las Vegas. He was a respected artist in his own right, known for the soul he poured into Elvis's songs, and for the occasional stunning gospel number that hushed every room. He had even started incorporating a few of his own blues-infused originals into his sets, always careful to blend them respectfully with his tribute, a subtle nod to his mentor's guidance. He never stopped honoring Elvis, but now he did so with an authenticity that was entirely his own. His relationship with Elvis remained a cherished, fiercely guarded secret. Their late-night calls continued, albeit less frequently, as their respective schedules grew busier, but no less meaningful. Elvis continued to draw strength and quiet joy from Ronnie's updates, from knowing that his music, his legacy, was in such loving and capable hands. One evening, Elvis called Ronnie, his voice sounding tired, but with a familiar warmth. "Ronnie," he began, "I'm not feeling my best lately. The road's been tough." Ronnie's heart tightened. He knew Elvis hadn't been well. "I'm sorry to hear that, Elvis. Just rest up, all right? Take care of yourself." "I'm trying, son," Elvis said, a weak chuckle. "But I wanted to tell you something. You know all those things we talked about the music, about finding your own voice, about staying true to your heart." "Yes, Elvis, I remember every word," Ronnie said, his throat tight. "You've done it, Ronnie," Elvis continued, his voice full of genuine pride. "You've really done it. You honor me in a way no one else. You make me proud, son. You make the music live." He paused, and Ronnie heard a deep, weary sigh. "Keep that fire burning, Ronnie, always." Ronnie swallowed the lump in his throat. "I will, Elvis. I promise, always." That was the last time they spoke. Not long after, the world mourned the passing of Elvis Presley, the King. Ronnie was devastated. He locked himself in his apartment listening to Elvis's records, a profound sense of loss settling over him. He felt the weight of his promise, the unspoken legacy shared between them. The night after Elvis's passing, the Blue Suede Lounge was silent. Closed in mourning, but Ronnie knew he had to sing. He couldn't go to Graceland, not openly, but he could honor his friend, the only way he knew how. He went to a small, obscure club on the outskirts of town, a place where no one really knew Ronnie the King Turner, just a quiet place where local musicians sometimes gathered for open mic nights. He didn't wear a jumpsuit, he wore a simple black shirt and jeans. He carried only his acoustic guitar. He stepped onto the tiny stage, the single spotlight illuminating him. The few patrons, mostly regulars, looked up surprised to see a face they didn't recognize. "My name is Ronnie," he said, his voice a little hoarse but steady. "And tonight, I want to sing for a friend. A very dear friend who taught me everything I know about music, about heart, and about being true to yourself." He began to play a soft finger-picked intro to "Can't Help Falling in Love." But this wasn't the version for the crowds, not the polished performance. This was raw, heartfelt, tinged with sorrow and deep affection. He sang, not as Elvis, but as Ronnie Turner, pouring every ounce of his gratitude, his grief, and his enduring love for the man who had been his unlikely mentor and friend. He followed it with "How Great Thou Art," his voice soaring with a newfound power and vulnerability, a testament to the lessons learned, the soul uncovered. The small audience was utterly captivated, some openly weeping. They didn't know why this young man was so emotional, but they felt it. They felt the power of a true artist pouring his heart out. Ronnie continued to perform for years, evolving his act, always with that core of authenticity Elvis had helped him find. He never revealed his secret. The private legacy was too precious, too sacred. He occasionally heard whispers, comparisons, even rumors from people who claimed to have known Elvis. But he would just smile, a quiet understanding in his eyes. He knew he had lived. And in the quiet moments, late at night, when the stages were empty and the crowds had gone home, Ronnie would sometimes look up at the stars, a single acoustic guitar in his hands. He would play a quiet melody, and he would think of his friend, a king, who had sought solace in anonymity and found a lasting harmony in the unlikeliest of friendships. Their bond, built on shared passion and trust, continued to resonate, a beautiful, heartwarming echo in the vast, glittering silence of the universe. The music and the friendship lived on.